Hello, this is Harold Halfton, and welcome to Archaeological Minecraft. I'm a former archaeologist who enjoys playing Minecraft and thought it'd be fun to combine the two. In today's episode, we're back on the Archaeo SMP, and this episode's going to be a bit different. As you know, normally in my episodes, I pick some structure or time period in history and build that while often talking through the history, culture, or archaeology of that build. But in this episode, I think it's going to be a bit different, as I've been thinking lately about time, and specifically the proportionality of time and how much or how little time exists between different historical events and how that relates to other historical events. Now, I know that's maybe a little bit confusing and a bit meta and conceptual, which I'm sure is going to make a great Minecraft video, right? Right? Well, I guess we'll all see together. So here's where my head's at with this and what started me down this thinking. I happened to be listening to a podcast, and I think it maybe was the Ancients podcast, which is a great podcast, by the way, and I highly recommend it. But in any case, the episode happened to be about the Council of Nicaea, which took place in AD 325, and that got me to thinking, well, that was 1,700 years ago. And so I started thinking about that same time span and what other things are in that same time span. And so I had just finished the last two episodes on the Carthaginian build, which spans around 1,400 years. And I was thinking, well, that's pretty close. But then I realized, well, that's 300 years different than those two. And so I naturally started thinking, well, what things are in history that are separated by about 300 years? And so 300 years would be about the time of the Council of Nicaea, back in time in Rome, to basically when the Roman Republic changed from being the Roman Republic to the Roman Empire. Or from that same time period, going even further back 300 years, it was from then that shift from Roman Republic to Roman Empire, you get to the time period of around when Alexander the Great lived, which isn't much different in time span between the founding of the United States and today. So I know I'm a total nerd, and now you have a little peek into how my brain works and noodles around, but I think sometimes it's easy to think about history, or ancient history, as just an amorphous something that happened in the past, and easy to think about time spans like 300 years, 500 years, or 1,000 years as it relates to historical things in different ways than maybe we think about that same relative time span in our own lives or in as it relates to recent events to our own day. So where are we going with all this? Because while that's all maybe intellectually interesting, or at least maybe it is for me, this episode can't just be me talking to the camera the whole time. So I thought maybe it would be good to try and create some sort of visualization in my base, kind of like a decoration timeline thing, to be able to show and talk through more examples of how events and people in the timeline of history comparatively relates to one another, kind of like the examples I was giving before. Okay, to do that, because I really haven't shown off my base before, or rather the tower part of my base. I mean, you've seen obviously a bunch of this kind of stuff as I've been building it, but you really haven't seen the tower portion of my base very often. Haven't shown that off beyond just maybe being in the background. But this is where I want to build this little decoration, because I have some ideas of maybe where I want to put this. So I'll give you a little dime tour of my base. So here's my entry cats, and then my smelter area, and I built this central tree in the entryway, and then you can hear villagers below, but we're going to ignore them here. The idea behind this base is really to have a whole just bunch of little farms building what I need in order to build the rest of my actual archaeological builds. So different farms to kind of keep things going, not big industrial farms, little fishing area over there. Here's where the big part of the tree is, and then pumpkin, melon farm, cactus farm, obviously ways to make brown dye, and then can keep going up here, because I think where I want to put this is up on this level where my portal is. So this is my main portal room, but you can see it's really sparse, and I've been thinking about what I want to put here. So here's what I'm envisioning. So you have a large kind of circular area here. You can hear my machines going up above me, but just like my lake, right? So this is a big circular lake, and this would be a big kind of circular area. But out here, you can see that, here's my Neolithic area, Bronze Age, kind of transitioning from, late Bronze Age into Iron Age, where I built those Carthaginian builds. And then you can't quite see it because the render distance is, here, let me see if I can't fly off. So you can see what I'm building here. So this would be kind of classical age. I haven't really built anything right there. Obviously the Visigothic villa in the early medieval. But these areas are not, there's kind of, they're not proportional based on the timeline of the world. And I kind of designed this so that, 0 AD BC kind of line is kind of directly across. So this is, in the BC realm over here, getting progressively older, and then everything from kind of directly across the lake over to my right here is all the, AD. So, AD 700, AD 1000, 1300, and then this is kind of going from, 0 BC, around 140-ish or so, going back to the beginning of the Carthaginian area, which would be around 800 or so, coming around to, obviously, Göbekli Tepe, really old, about 9,500 or so. So you can see time is not proportional in this. It's just kind of generally going around. So I want to create, again, we're talking about proportionality of time. So I'm thinking what I want to do is start by building little replicas of what I've built out there, like little mini versions, starting from, maybe around here. And then this would be maybe around 9,000, 9,500 or so BC, moving my way all the way around until we'd get to this side of the base, which would be around, like modern day. And then, but put everything that I've built around my base and other events and historical people and events in history all around the base, or not around the base, but all around this little circle here, but make it proportional. And so, maybe I'll count up the number of squares and then do maths to try and figure out where everything should be placed around here. And that's, I think, what we're going to try and build. So yeah, so let me maybe get started with that. Okay, so I'm going to pause here for a minute as I think there's some things to talk through. So as you can see, create a little framework. I tried to make it little open air so you can see through to see outside in these different areas. Let's see, each block is 213 years. So you can see each one of these represents 213 years based on the maths as you go all the way around from the beginning of the timeline all the way to the end, which would be modern day. So you can already start seeing a difference here between the outside lake and here. So you can see outside lake, like I said, this corresponded to around AD BC, 0 or so. You can see about a quarter of the way, you have Neolithic, and about a quarter of the way around, you have Bronze Age and then Iron Age across the lake. Because clearly you see here, we are halfway around and we're still in the Stone Age, right? Only start getting into the Bronze Age here and Iron Age all the way over here. So you can see that if I tried to do that out in the lake, it'd be highly compressed. All of this would have to swing over to the right, and then there'd be a lot more here, which would be Neolithic, Stone Age, all the way to Iron Age over here, Bronze Age over here. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to talk through here is what I have in my hand here, and then also what I'm going to be putting in these item frames. So these are kind of the major milestones in human development culture. So you got domestication of wheat, okay? You have domestication of cereal grains, wheat specifically here. You have sheep, domestication of sheep. You have domestication of cattle. You have pottery. So everything here is pre-pottery Neolithic. Okay, everything over here is Stone Age, but post-pottery. Then you start getting your pork, right? You get domestication of pigs, domestication of chicken. And then, here, let me pull down a couple of these other ones here as I go through the rest. And then you have a domestication of sponges. No, I'm just kidding. It's actually cheese. And then you have copper. So, yes, this is the Bronze Age over here. But you start seeing copper much earlier. And you have, I didn't really divide this into Bronze Age, Copper Age. So you really start seeing copper around here for the first time. But there was a span of time which would be the Copper Age. Maybe I'll put some these trapdoors under the Stone Age to represent the copper. Not a good way to do copper versus bronze. You have the wheel. Okay, so that's not sunflowers. I mean, it is a sunflower, but it's the wheel in this case. It's nice and circular. And then you have this representing cuneiform, so the earliest writing in Mesopotamia. You have a saddle to represent the domestication of the horse. And then all the way over here, you have a boat to represent the circumnavigation of the Earth. So Magellan's circumnavigation. Magellan died on the way around, but the unnamed anonymous sailors on his ship completed the first circumnavigation of the Earth, and so that's what's over there. So yeah, I'm gonna continue working on this, start adding the stuff that I talked about, and yeah, I'll check back in with you guys once I'm done. Okay, hope you enjoyed that time lapse. Let me walk you through what I built here in my little mini builds. So as I talked about before, I did put some dates on there, starting with 9,500 BC. So that's about the start of Göbekli Tepe, and then that goes all the way to around 8,000 BC. So that takes us to there. So the idea behind all these little mini builds is really just to drop a couple of blocks that just gives you a little mental reminder, maybe makes you think about what they look like. Obviously this is a dugout canoe here, and so yeah, so they just kind of correspond to what I've built already around the lake here. So yeah, so sometimes you maybe have to squint a little bit to try and recognize what this is. So this is the reed boat. So reed boat out here, I actually built it more according to the Egyptian, time period, where this reed boat is the earliest reed boat found, which was actually in Kuwait, not the time period I put out there, but this was around, a little bit after 5,400 BC. And so, as you can see, I didn't put a date here on every single one. I thought about doing that, but, when I put signs next to all these historical events and or people in history, and you can see there's a bunch more here when we have a lot more records as archaeologists and historians. I didn't put the dates here because I thought it would get a little bit confusing. So for example, some of this stuff over here, like the Roman Civil War, when Marius and Sulla, two Roman generals, were fighting each other, that did take place around this time period, and then you jump forward in history about 213 years or so, and you get to about the Emperor Vespasian and Titus. But, some of this other stuff, you just kind of had to pick, the nearest 213 year kind of segment. So, some of this stuff, isn't exactly lining up. So someone who maybe looks at this says, oh, well, this isn't exactly here. This happened 100 years separate, but it's in the same segment. And then, yes, that's true. But that's, yeah, those are little details. Okay, slept for a little bit. That way we get some nice light coming through the windows instead of just some darkness. So continue walking around here. Or actually, I should start here. So this is Çatalhöyük, which is the earliest city. So yeah, so that's a little bit before, so around right here. And then this is the start of the kind of Sumer civilization around this time period. And then we start getting into the Batai culture, and then Stonehenge, Newgrange, the Yamnaya culture. I did a video, not on this world, but on my single-player world, with the Batai and the Yamnaya culture. And then I also built Newgrange. This build here is my Neolithic, house there. That's up on some stilts, so you can see my little stilts here. And then you start getting into the Khufu boat right here, which, look out this door here this time. So this is right there, which is an Egyptian boat found next to the Great Pyramid of Giza. So that corresponds with the Great Pyramid of Giza here, which is around this same time period. And then, funnily enough, here around this time period, about 2250 BC, that's when the last woolly mammoths went extinct, up in an island on the very north coast of Siberia. And then not long after that, you get the start of the Mayan civilization. And so I did, a lot of this stuff is focused on a kind of European, Mediterranean. That's the area of the world I know best. But I did scatter some little things in other areas of the world. This is when Mesoamerican ball court game gets invented, all the way back here around the times of Ramses II in New Kingdom, Egypt. Okay, this is the Hittite build. Okay, so this is about the start of the Hittites, around right here. And then this is around when the Hittites ended, corresponding to the Bronze Age collapse. Also in the New World, around the start of when the Olmecs. And then the Olmecs lasted all the way out to around right here, which is concurrent, generally speaking, with Alexander the Great. So, and then we start moving into, Bronze Age collapse. That's when the Iron Age started. So then we start moving into the Iron Age. We get our Carthaginian build here. So you get Hittites, and then not long after, the Carthaginians start. And then this is the triremes, my little trireme here. Again, you might have to squint to recognize the trireme. Here, I'll show you what that looks like out on the lake here. So these are the triremes out there. And so you can see the little beak of the trireme, and then the wooden sides. So yeah, represented here by the little beak and the wooden sides. So let's see, other things here. Yeah, the Han Dynasty in China. It's interesting to think about Sun Tzu. Sun Tzu is who wrote The Art of War, is older than Alexander the Great. Most people maybe wouldn't think about that. And then some of the earliest parts of the Great Wall of China were built around when Rome was founded. So let's see here. Yeah, Constantine the Great. He's the one who moved the capital of the Roman Empire over to the east into Constantinople. Used to be Byzantium, modern day Istanbul. Let's see here. You got Attila the Hun, and then you have, which is kind of the start of when, maybe not the specific Visigothic villa. Visigothic villa is more kind of concurrent with about 700 or so AD, or AD 700, I should say. But this area of Visigothic Spain kind of lasts around this long. And then you get the fall of the Western Roman Empire. You have kind of the Vikings era, and when they kind of went to the New World, concurrent with Great Zimbabwe, which is another episode I made on my channel. Get my little small Motte Bailey castle, and then, which is kind of a little bit concurrent on the later part of Motte Bailey with Genghis Khan. And then you get the fall of the Western Roman Empire. So you get all the way here. You don't think about Rome. Rome was founded in around, I believe, 733, if I'm remembering off the top of my head. But 733 or so BC, and goes all the way through. The western half fell around 400 or so, AD 400. And then, but the Eastern Roman Empire lasts all the way to the 1400s, which is about concurrent with, the New World and Christopher Columbus and the Black Death and all that. Black Death was a little earlier, about 100 years before. And then you get the end of the Mayan civilization, so, about concurrent with the explorers with the New World. So all the way from, effectively before the Hittites, you know, before Ramses II, you know, around 2250 or so, about 2025, or let me do my math the right way, about 2000 or so BC, all the way through to here. So pretty astounding. And then you kind of get to the American Revolution around right here, and then this is modern day. So this is our little history in the United States right here. So not so long. And yeah, so this is kind of the history of the world and history of the builds of the base. And oh, this is the little igloo here, so you can see that the early Inuit builds that I built over here in this part of my base. So yeah, so I'll continue to add to this as I continue to add stuff out there. Well, I think that'll do for this episode. I know it was a bit of a weird one, but hopefully you liked it and found my timeline of human history decoration thing thought-provoking at least. Make sure you take the time to like, subscribe, and all that stuff if you want to see more content like this. I suspect the algorithms like that kind of stuff. Thanks, have a good rest of your day. Bye for now. I gotta go take care of that little guy hiding behind Göbekli Tepe. Peeking out a little bit there. Peek, peek, peek. Hello? What are you doing in my base? What are you doing? You gonna be my base buddy? Base buddies. Sneaking in through my portal.